ठीक है 340 हो गया है थैंक्स सर yeah true blue eyes hypnotize sure okay Riju are we recording should I start you can start you can start okay so I welcome you all to the third training session from the Revolutionist English Debating Society of Shaheed Bhagat Singh. I'm Aditya Sarin and I'll be majorly going through rebuttals, refutations and points of information in a debate. For any of these things to be relevant to you, these are some things that you have to do in every debate, something that you should like make a note of. First things first, like in every debate, you need to learn how to listen because listening is another skill that you will develop throughout like the career out in the society. Because see, listening isn't in a debate isn't that easy as it sounds because you also have to talk to your teammates, you also have to make notes, you also have to ask questions. So all of these combined, one second, I'll answer all your questions later. So all of these skills combined, listening is let's say a little bit of a tough task, but eventually that's a skill you will have to improve upon. Secondly, making notes. On this point, making notes efficiently or effectively is the way to go because for a 7 minute speech, if you make a note for everything that they say, you will run out of papers very quickly and you won't be able to catch up and you might miss out on important things that they say. So, learning how to make notes and learning where their important points are or learning where their premises are is again very important. And thirdly, even though you need to talk to your teammates in points of what to say or how to rebut certain arguments or what question lining you want to follow, still don't over talk to them. In online debating, this is still fine because you chat with each other, so there is no direct distraction. But in like a physical debate, if you overtalk to your teammates, they will also miss out on something. You will also miss out on something, and the opposition team will keep telling you that you missed out on this, and you will lose that debate. Okay. So we have made this mistake a lot of time. We were talking to each other like what rebuttals to give or what questions to ask, and we overlooked or misheard some of the points that the opposite team said, and therefore very detrimental to us. So don't do that. These are the three golden rules. Take a screenshot, make this your wallpaper, read this every morning when you wake up. Uh, yeah, saying that rebuttals, right? What are rebuttals? Importantly, rebuttals are negative arguments, basically saying that rebuttals are your way to either attack the opposite team's case, or rebuttals are also a way to defend your own case by rebutting to something that they rebutted. So I'll start with something very basic. So, for example, assume that your opposite team said that we're gonna legalize polygamy because human beings cannot live with like one partner for the rest of their life and it is unhealthy for them. Now something like this is an assertion or an assumption at max. To point that out, how do you break this argument, right? This is where you go in your next speaker or you go in a question and you say that, see, whatever you're saying is an assumption that can't be supported by either logic or evidence because we see from the past 400 years, not 400, let's say 200, 3 years, 300 years, polygamy as a activity or polygamy as an institution is not that popular and still the world is fine. So we don't believe that human beings intrinsically are meant to be married that way. Same way, rebuttals ka secondary use is pointing out gaps in logic. So, okay, I'll give you a statement right now. You guys have to tell me what's the gap here. And like for this session, like for the entirety of the session, it will have to be an interactive session because I can't tell you rebuttal for each and every argument out there. No, that's literally impossible for me to do. So I'll give you like a lot of questions and a lot of themes, and under those, I'll ask you what the gaps and what rebuttals could be here. So the statement made by the opposite team is abortion can reduce crime rates in the present day scenario. This is something imagine the opposite team said. I'll give you guys 30 seconds to write your answers in chat. Tell me that what's the gap in this logic. Tell me why this statement isn't true. Uh, if anyone of you want to try, go for it. After like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, I'll tell you what's the gap here. And then maybe you guys start thinking in that way. Okay. There is okay in future, Doiman, that's the gap. But can you be a little bit more specific? There is no reason to support the statement that it will reduce crime rates. Okay, so don't tell me there is no reason. Tell me what's that negative reason or what no reason is. There is no evidence to support. Okay, there is no direct relation between abortion and crime rate. Anshuman, there is. If you want to read up about it, let me know later. Baseless argument. They're not even related to each other. They are very much related to each other. Uh, Infanticide cases are reduced. Okay, interesting. In present scenario, it is not possible. Reduced. Okay. It is not essentially a fact that all abortion of those children will be criminals. There is evidence that will reduce crime rate in the future if one has read. Yeah, exactly. See, no one knows what I'm talking about. So if you read Free Economics or if you've seen Boston Legal, one of these places, they have given out reports or there are like studies which showed that abortion can reduce crime rate in the future. Uh, I'll give you another. Okay, I'll give you another 30 seconds to think why. Why do you think abortion can reduce crime rate in the future? Or how can abortion reduce crime rate in the future? Because you've pointed out the gap in the argument that it won't reduce it in the present, it will reduce it in the future. Now you have to tell me why. Why will it reduce it in the future? Try thinking. Try going on a logical note. Yeah, yeah, true. There are unwanted children might be raised in an unfavorable environment and might turn into future trauma. Yeah, okay. So because of less population, there'll be more resources and opportunity available for an average person. So they won't need. Okay, Snigdha, that could be true theoretically, but I don't know if that can be proven with evidence because decreased population and creating more opportunities is something I'm not sure will work the same way you're theoretically trying to say. But yeah, Rishabh was right, Daria was right. The reason why it will reduce crime rate in the future is because the criminals who will be born out of these, let's say, if abortion laws were not there and abortion was illegal, and like children who were born who were likable or liable to be criminals in future were never born. So if you see this was the fact for this or the evidence for this is in like Massachusetts, state of Massachusetts, they legalized abortion somewhere around 1980s, and for the next 10-15 years there was no change. But like if you see reports from 2000-ish 2000 era, they reduced crime rates because the children who would be committing crimes in their 20s were never born. Okay, that's one of the reasons why it was said that abortion can reduce. So what I'm trying to teach you, and like this is not about abortion, and this is not about like me teaching you like specific argument. This is about learning two things here, right? One, you need to know what the gap is in the logic, and two, you need to fill the gap yourself. So there are two ways I could have done this, right? I could have just told you what the gap is and moved on, or I could have explained what the gap is, and then maybe you guys understand that more. So now imagine yourself as Agis and me as a debater. Now, if I just say that what the gap is and leave and don't give anything more, the Agis might not even buy it, right? Because there is no reason for them to. One of them is asserting one way, one of them is asserting the other way. So rebuttals are not just statements, they're also logical arguments, they're also links that you have to draw. Okay. So rebuttals are not one liner refutations or one line arguments. You have to complete that line of argument. Thirdly, rebuttals are also used to defend your own case, basically saying that if you say something and the opposite team rebuts that, you also need to rebut their rebuttals. This is fairly simple. If you want to win debates, you have to rebut what they're saying about your case and you have to defend your case. All right. Uh, One second. But if I start to explain it, don't you think I might end up saying something in their favor? No, Damon, why would you end up saying something in their favor? Think before what you're saying. No. So, yeah, if you know what your case is and if you know what their case is, you will always know what favors your case and what favors their case. This will come a little bit more with understanding of what your case is and understanding where their case lies. Yeah, I don't think you'll end up saying something in their favor. Also, don't be scared, even though if you do, you're just starting out. Yeah, how to rebut arguments. first things first, you have to learn how to listen in a debate. I said this in the golden rules. I'm saying it again. If you don't listen in a debate to the like opposite team speaker, you will not know what their case is about, and you will not know what they're saying about your case. As fun as it would sound to sometimes ignore opposite speakers, you can't, right? Because they might end up saying something which could be logically fallacious, but help them win their case. And if you don't rebut certain arguments, you will lose. Okay, no matter how like unreal their statements could be, no matter how bad their logic could be, if you don't rebut it, or if you don't refute it, or if you just leave it to saying something like, oh, it's so obvious that it's false that I just won't believe it, that won't happen. I just won't believe that that's a lie till you tell them it's a lie. Okay. So that's the first thing. You have to listen every argument that they say. Now, this is like something more important, something you'll get with experience. You have to locate and identify the important arguments in a case, right? So and we told you yesterday there are four things in a case. There's a principle, there's a assertion or assumption, there's logic, and there's evidence. Okay, what do you think is the most important argument here? What do you think? So I told you four things, right? There's a premise of their case, there's an assertion or an assumption that they're trying to prove, there's logic behind those statements, and then there's evidence to prove logic. What do you think is the most important thing here, and something that you have to rebut first? Take time, take time. Yeah, so you guys are saying either premise or logic. One of you said assertion. So, premise is the most important thing you need to disprove in a debate, because premise will be mostly singular in nature. They'll be only trying to prove one situation true or false. They will be only trying to prove one end case. So that's their premise or the world they want to live in. So you have to prove that the premise or the basis of their case or their need for this case, or like the law, like the understanding that whether do we need this move or not, is false. So again, imagine them saying something like, "We'll ban all the weapons in a country." Let's say they'll say that we'll ban all weapons in America, because their premise would be that it can create a situation where people are killing each other. Okay, that's their premise. Now, they can have n number of arguments to prove why gun rights are important, and they can have n number of arguments giving you examples and assertions. But their premise needs to be falsified, right? You need to falsify the argument that whether do we even need gun rights in the first place or not. So that's the most important thing, and that's the most crucial thing you need to attack. Okay, and this now I'll tell you like how to rebut arguments in a speech. So whatever you're trying to rebut, always tell what you're trying to rebut. Okay, don't just assume that the adjudicators know what I'm talking about. So example, if you're rebutting something, say it in a couple of lines that what their premise is about. Tell the edges what they said, like in a couple of lines, and then start rebutting that argument, right? So give like a two-line summary of what you're trying to break down. So say edges, they said this. We believe that this argument made by them does not make sense to us, and therefore we'll tell you this to disprove it. Okay, this is important because now edges will also read in their sheets what the other team said. Now, if you have like done the second part properly, if you have located the premise properly, and I just realize that you also know what their premise is and what you're attacking is important to their case, they will also listen to you very carefully, because they know that whatever you're going to say next like is heavily dependent on whether you win or not. So once you get their attention, like this is where you start breaking down arguments. Now, respond with your arguments and your logic. One thing always important in rebuttals is make sure that those arguments are coming from your case and not from like a third person or a third room debate perspective. So whatever you're trying to rebut, make sure that there's something beneficial coming out for your case. अगर वो कुछ ऐसा बोल रहे हैं कि दिस इज अ थर्ड, मतलब कुछ ऐसा बोल रहे हैं जो उनके केस को बेनिफिट नहीं करता, or it's not even closely related to the motion, you should ideally ignore that, because at a point, or just say to the edges that they're trying to make this happen, but this is not relevant to the motion, and we don't believe that this falls under the ambit of this debate. Okay, So now when you know that what's the ambit or what's the expectation or limitation of this debate, now start responding with your arguments and your logic. Now, how do you do that, right? First, and this is the easiest way to respond, is by drawing a contrast or a comparison in the debate. Tell them that, see, they're trying to achieve this world, and we're also trying to achieve the similar world. But the way we are going to achieve this world is better off, and now see why. Once you get the edges, like you tell them, said, see, this is a clear comparison. Uh, Either you want this or that, and we'll tell you why this is better than that. So once you start comparing cases, it's very easy to fall like understand what you're trying to say, no? Because at the end of the day, a debate or a motion will only ask you to prove one premise at best. So once you have like the end goal in mind, and once you have the understanding that where does this debate end, so the impact can be compared, right? Now, whenever you draw a comparison, this is a more likely a biased comparison. You don't be fair, even if you think that wow, their means are better. You can't just say that. You have to contrast in a biased way. And lastly, don't try to rebut every example, because there are two reasons for it. One, Pratish already told you that they'll come up with another one, and it's too time consuming to do it. But also, secondly, if you try and rebut every example, you will not have time for your own speech left, because examples in a debate and the opposite speaker, each speaker will throw at least 4 or 5 examples at you. And imagine you're a whip of you imagine your opposition whip. Opposition whips can have sometimes up to 10, 12 examples to disprove, and 10 12 disproving 10, 12 example in a speech is not a joke. You won't be able to do it. So rather, all these examples, combine them with one premise. All right, these all the examples origin from a premise or a principle or a logical statement, right? Attack that individually. If you instead spend a minute and a half, or even 2 minutes attacking a premise instead of 30 seconds attacking each example, it will make more sense to the edges, because examples A can be very heavily manipulated. क्योंकि examples में there's not a clear end goal or there's not a clear understanding. It's like statistics sometimes that you can manipulate statistics in a way that it makes sense in whichever way you present it to. So examples are not the best way to attack, and there's like a very a clear exception here. Exception is unless and until their case is built on an example, unless and until that there is no other way for you to win a debate by just not beating their example, then only attack their examples, but otherwise rather avoid it. Now, this is something you guys will rebut today. This is one of the three motions I'll give you. The motion is this house will ban gambling. I'm telling you a gov case. Take 30 seconds and respond. I'll tell you whether that response is good or not, because I think I can. Gov case on this is gambling is a social evil generally seen as a negative virtue. Gambling makes people go broke and only economically benefits the rich. Gambling industry promotes other activities like drug use or gun violence. Uh, you guys are opposition, all 47 of you. Try thinking of rebuttals on any of these statements or combined rebuttal for any of them. Uh, Anytime, whenever you're ready, just start writing them in the chat. If you have any question about this, let me know. But you guys have what, 30 seconds? I'll put a timer. You guys have 30 seconds. Please start thinking. Okay, let's do this. Try breaking down one by one in case line. So the first gov case line is gambling is a social evil and generally seen as a negative virtue. What rebuttals can we think of this? What are like appropriate responses, refutations, or rebuttals to this? The first statement is an assertion on and based on values rather than evidence. Okay. Values are not necessarily a lack of evidence. So I'll tell you this way. No, there are some values that are universal in nature, which are generally accepted. Values like you should not promote violence, values like you should not hit the marginalized. That's something that's socially accepted. No. So there are some socially negative virtues, but yeah, it is an assertion in most places. But I think you should expand a little bit more on that. It is not necessarily a fact that it will only benefit the rich. In fact, according to my opinion, the benefit it will benefit more the person who plays better, even if he's poor. Okay, okay, that's interesting. Gambling is a personal choice and doesn't harm anyone in the society in any way if he or she does gambling. Interesting. Stock exchange is also kind of gamble, but it isn't seen as negative. That's because stock exchange mein there's a lot of notion of skill involved. Not everyone can make money easily in stock market compared to gambling. That's why stock exchange doesn't have that much of negatives in it. The fact that gambling is an industry shows how it is providing employment to several individuals. The problems the government provides here can be dealt with more specific measures, but banning the very activity is going to worsen status quo by taking away several jobs. Okay, interesting, Ansh. Okay, I'll talk about this in some time. Uh, benefits the rich only benefits the rich only if they win. Similarly, if the poor can also participate in gambling, they can benefit economically too whenever they win. Okay, you guys are not really getting what the notion of gambling is. Stock market is not gambling purely based on skill. True, not purely. Like, let's say 99% of it. Banning something does not mean the same as 100% putting an end to it. Banning gambling would only push it to underground and underworld mafia and shady individuals make it involved this increasing crime. Interesting, very interesting. Yeah, this is an argument you can make for criminalizing anything in the world. Like, for example, marijuana criminalization or any drug abuse that you want to talk about. This is very true. Like, it's very tough to get everything out of the society and it will generally end up as an underground activity. And can we control the underground world more than we can like control it overtly? Probably not. Interesting argument, actually. Gambling does not have negative virtues. It's like a business. It's like a business. One who's a player that wins and earns more than the person they can have impact. Obviously, gambling helps in socializing and also one of the way to become rich for the poor if they win. Gambling is not a social evil and it's an individual choice if a person is skilled in the game and has limits. Okay, can we say that gambling can be made legal so that it benefits who it's supposed to be? Okay, I'll tell you guys something, okay? Gambling as a way to escape the circle of poverty is a not good argument because even if you strictly go by the numbers, in gambling, 99% people are supposed to lose. Let's say take the lottery thing, no? Imagine if 100 people buy the lottery ticket, only one of them will win, and 99 of them will go broke after that lottery. Imagine if 100 people buy lottery tickets and put everything that they have because they want to escape the circle of poverty and put everything in that lottery ticket. Let's say over the 10 days, 20 days, whatever. Now, only one of them will win. There is only one person or one winner in a gambling case. Does that help one person escape poverty? Sure. But does that cripple the other 99% of the people? Yeah, it does. So, gambling as a way to escape the circle of poverty or the culture of poverty is not the best argument to be made here. There was one very interesting argument that I saw. Okay, one of the better arguments that there were is that gambling is a personal choice. It's but personal choice in terms of how. Okay, let's you guys try thinking of this way. Uh, there I said that gambling is a personal choice and doesn't harm anyone in the society in any way. Okay, but how and why is gambling a personal choice? Think more on that note. Is gambling a personal choice or something that someone makes you do it? Is gambling necessarily forcefully done on you? Try thinking on that note maybe a little. It's more about personal desire, pleasure rather than greed. Mm-hmm. Okay. do you even try thinking on this note? Now, how does personal desire not turn into greed after the point? Because if you see general human understanding as a sapiens may, or if you read about human evolution, greed is something that has always been associated with humans. But you could do even think on another note here: is greed always a necessarily bad virtue? You think greed is something that's wrong in 10 out of 10 situations? Maybe that's something to think about. But yeah, try thinking on a personal note. Is gambling a personal choice? And if yes, can personal choices like this be promoted? Or are personal choices like this promoted in the society? Try thinking on that note, thoda sa. I think one can play gambling even while going to non-violence. Why? A person knows there are 99% chance to get involved. It's completely their choice. Yeah, okay, that does make sense. People are in it for the thrill more than they're in it for winning. Okay, that's interesting. Uh, I would say that this is more of a personal choice. Okay, you guys are saying it's a personal choice. True, agreed. But tell me why. Try thinking of why should it be recognized as a personal choice and not a social event. How does okay? Think on this note, right? I'll Murder is also a personal choice, isn't that bad? Yeah, murder is also in the personal choice, but you can't just combine all personal choices and say personal choices are wrong. No. Yeah, murder is wrong, but is gambling a personal choice also equivalent to murder? Until maybe some false equivalence here, but yeah, good thinking maybe. Try thinking on like this note, right? Why are some things recognized as good personal choices and why others are not? Why are some personal choices recognized in the society while others are not? Try thinking on that note. Gambling involves one's individual wealth. Yeah, gambling is more social and become an addiction. Uh, okay. In practical scenarios, most of the time gambling is done by people who are on the verge of being broke and mostly done by people who are poor. So instead of banning it, why not take measures to improve economic conditions that people will not have a problem? Okay, Kushi, there are two, three big gaps here. One, you're assuming that only people who are on the verge of being broke are doing it. That's not true. People go to Vegas to party. I'm sure they're not all broke. I'm sure they're just some of them are just trying to have fun. I would rather say that the people who are doing gambling because they're all on the verge of broke are lesser than the number of people who are just doing it for the thrill. I would assume that statement to be more plausible. Is mostly done by people who are poor. Again, up to debate. So instead of banning it, why not take measures to improve economic conditions? True, but why not always take measures to improve economic conditions? The personal choices that are harm anyone are acceptable. The argument that gambling promotes drug use and gun violence is absolutely stereotypical and can be easily applied to other entertainment industries such as music and the gov world. True, true, true. If we go on and ban these activities and industries simply because they're associated with drug abuse and gun violence, and essentially all entertainment industries should be banned. The government here is trying to shove off responsibility. Interesting argument, Anj. Interesting argument, really interesting argument. I'll not lie. That is one of the better rebuttals of the third one. Apps like Dream 11 are also kind of an gambling app, provide employment to many. Uh, Technically, Dream 11 doesn't qualify as gambling, at least in Indian law, because again, it qualifies as some skill based activity. But yeah, interesting thing. It's not a personal choice because a person is never willing to achieve wealth or pleasure for himself. Okay. Just like we have the choice to participate in any other activity like singing, playing poker, should the right to gamble. Okay. Murder is affecting the other person by taking his or her life, gambling. Okay. Because these choices have a direct variance on individual lives, it can be categorized on the basis of effect it may have. Okay. Because gambling does not harm a person who is not involved in it, it only harms who is doing it. True, true. But it does harm society at some level, I'm sure. If gambling is a person, you guys are still not understanding the premise I'm trying to make you think about. Why do some things are allowed as personal choices? Okay, one of the answers here is that some personal choices affect other people more than they affect themselves. That's why they're not allowed. But something like smoking, right? Smoking is a personal choice that is, if not, let's say, legally accepted in the society, but it still affects the other person who are around you, right? So if you're smoking and somebody's standing next to you, they're also inhaling secondhand smoke. So why is that allowed? Yeah, because try thinking on this note, but try thinking more on the personal level. There's a very interesting principal argument to be made here. I'm just waiting for someone to make that. Isn't gambling mostly done by rich people who have a lot of money to blow off? Sometimes. I can't assume who do gambling. Can we add the cultural element to the personal choice? How is gambling very much a cultural leisure characteristic for the rich, and that by banning this activity, we're inherently curtailing the rights of poor group? Okay, and I'll tell you something on this cultural note, something that is helping the uplifted of the society and might, okay, try seeing it this way. No, poor people are the ones who will suffer if something goes wrong. Imagine if gambling exists, there are rich people and there are poor people. Poor people might lose out everything that they have in their life, while as rich people might just lose out maximum a week's salary or something like that. So if you compare and contrast this in a world in which gambling does not exist, you can see that why it will benefit the poor people by banning this activity. And generally, you try to uplift the marginalized more than trying to uplift the uplifted. Okay, but yeah, okay, I'll tell you what I was trying to think. Maybe you guys can relate to it. Gambling is a personal choice because the money I'm spending on it is my money. Okay? The money I'm spending on it is the money that I put in my bank account after paying my taxes to the government. I have worked for this money. I have went to office for the last 30 days. I haven't slept properly in 30 days for the money to make. So at the end of the day, I get to make that choice, no, where I spend this money or not. So on a principle note, what I was expecting one of you to say is that people have the right to choose whether or where their money should be spent. Okay, inherently something on the note of private property, money can be seen as private property too, and like restricting someone's way of spending their money or restricting someone's addition or like expenditure of their private property is something one's okay. Yeah, so that's the note I was thinking on a principal note. Yeah, on practical notes, you guys were right. It could make people go broke. It could actually ruin some families. That was all right. But try thinking a little bit more on the principal note here for the other two ones. That's the same argument someone would make when someone want to buy banned drugs or weapons. Yeah, true, it would. But drugs, there's a different argument. Drugs again will fall under the same premise. Weapons, this same argument won't work because weapons are generally used to inflict violence, and violence as a notion is generally not accepted in the society. That's why this argument will not work for weapons. There are other arguments for procuring weapons, but we're not going into that right now. This can be reported since money can also be used to practice illegal activity. True, I'm not saying that this argument is perfect, but I'm saying that in this situation, in this case scenario, in only this context, money as an individual property or money as something that I own should not be restrictive. Okay. I think, okay, if you generalize this principle to every debate or like every argument in the world, no principle will truly hold. Try locating a principle which works for this specific argument or this specific case, man. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Yeah. Okay, good versus bad rebuttals. Now you guys can understand which some of your rebuttals were good and some of your rebuttals were not that great. Okay, always attack the premise first, something I already told you. Every case is either built on an assumption or a principle. Uh, so the assumption here was that that was okay. You guys are not okay. This will work. So the assumption was that gambling is a social evil, and the right to spending money or spending your own money is not something that you should be allowed to have. Okay, that was the assumption. Second assumption was here that all the social evils in the society should be banned because they have a negative image or a negative consequence. These were the assumption I was hoping you guys would realize, or principle I hope you guys would realize. Secondly, good rebuttals. Avoid attacking examples, waste a lot of time, can divert the debate. I'll give you another example here, right? So imagine if I was Guff in this case, and I give you 20, 30, 40 cases of people, and I'll tell you like small anecdotes of 20, 30 families who lost their families and who lost their life savings and everything and every that. I can give like 20 examples in 3 speeches easily. if you spend all those time to just rebutting case by case, you will never have time left for your own case. Because out of 7 minutes, the maximum time you should spend rebutting the arguments of the other team, or you should always spend like something between 3 and 4 minutes, because they have spent 7 minutes on it, and I'm sure there is some good coming, like good content coming out of that. Okay, so generally either spend 3 minutes or 4 minutes, like somewhere in between that period. Attacking premises is consistent and can evolve. Okay, this is something that you guys need to understand, and this is something like will come in a lot of like help when you actually do debates. Premises are like one argument or basis of the debate, right? Something that they can't change throughout the debate. So, for example, if they say that we'll ban gambling because we don't want this negative virtue to exist in a society, in the second or third speaker, they can't just come up and say that no, it's not a negative virtue, but it can make people like go into the other activities. So their principle or like their base argument will always be the same. Okay. And now there are n number of ways to attack that. But for example, if you just only rebut the third argument, right? Imagine you only rebut things saying like the industry promotes other activities like drug use or gun violence. They will come up with like 20 examples of saying that this casino somewhere won a lottery, and then this casino got robbed, and there was this mass shooting, and these mass shootings, casinos have a lot of money stored, and that makes them a center for getting attacked. All of these arguments are something that can evolve and something that can be worked from example to example. So if you spend your whole like time, or if you spend the whole speech on just rebutting examples, you will never have something consistent in your speech. Okay, what I mean by consistent? So Omid, and like I just told you that there are three speakers or like three partners in a team, right? It's always beneficial if all three of you attack the premise in a different way. The only way to make sure that Ajis recognize or Ajis know that what you're saying is being said on from the first speaker onwards, and something that Pratish also told you about yesterday, that new premise, new lines of rebuttals or something rebutting something that has not been spoken upon in your first speaker will not be generally recognized by the Ajis. What I mean by consistency here is that you have to understand that you have to start rebutting arguments from the first speaker onwards. So even if it's leader of opposition, the leader of opposition has a duty of putting opposition's case forward, but also has a duty to tag some arguments that are going to be made by their team. If, like, for example, opposition team's first two speakers don't go ahead and rebut arguments, but only give out a positive case, right? And only maybe tackle a couple of examples here and there throughout the speech. If the whip now comes and questions the premise or questions the assumption, they're going to come in the gov reply and say, let's see, what they said in the first two speakers is this, and their whip is now completely giving off new information, and we do not have enough time to tackle what he or she said in the speech. Okay, at that point, the ads will not buy anything that the whip said. That's called late content in a debate. So for to make sure that rebuttals aren't even seen as late content, or rebuttals are seen as something that are negative case, you have to start being consistent. Voice is cracking. One second. Uh, Give me a second. Hello, is it better now? Is my voice not cracking anymore?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Okay, so yeah, the reason why you have to be consistent and like, evolve your arguments is better, but maybe you should try to be. Okay, I'll refresh the page once. Okay, am I audible now? Is the voice better? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I was talking about consistency and evolve, right? So also, when your first speaker or leader of opposition goes ahead and attacks the premise, they will also defend it. So when they defend it, you have to attack it again. And this is what I mean by evolve. You have to attack a premise in different ways and continuously. Because at any speaker, if you give up attacking their premise or give up attacking their assumption, the next speaker will come up and say this in their first line. Because we did not believe that the previous speaker spoke about this, we believe that they're content with our assumption, and therefore we believe we should win this debate. They will actually come out and say that because you were not listening to us, or because you did not feel that this argument is important, we're going to emphasize on this important and make sure that your last speaker does not have enough time to rebut it. That this is why, if your team as a whole understand what the enemy prince, I need to stop saying enemy, opposite team's principle is, then you have a better off way to attack that. And lastly, this is again really important, especially for the whip speeches, because comparison in a debate, saying that, see, this is their world. In their world, maybe gambling doesn't exist, but on the problematic note, in their world also gambling could exist as an underground activity. In their world also, people's right to liberty and choices are restricted. In their world also, people are not allowed to spend the money that they want to, and we believe that's something that we're not fine with. You go ahead and say that in our world, okay, we might have these problems existing, but at least we can monetize it, or at least monitor these activities coming to us, right? You can say that, see, on a comparison, if you ban it versus if you don't ban it, if you ban it, there will be activities that will be going on underground, same activities, just less accessible and less corrupt, and mostly money flowing in and out of the underground world, right? On the comparison, what is going to happen to us? On the comparison, we're going to make sure that we're going to monitor the money that's been flowing out of these casinos. On the comparison, we're going to make sure that the people who are going there are like spending their legit money, and it's not just let's say funneling of money, or let's say laundering of money, right? That's a lot of comparison, and that, like, on a contrast, you can make sure that even if gambling exists, even if this is seen as a social evil, even this if this is a negative virtue, banning it will not make these problems go away. Okay, that's a comparison that you should make in a debate, because comparisons are always easy for Ajis to understand. Like, understand this now. If I just go out and give my case, there will be some muddiness left in Ajis' mind. Okay, but what happens in this world about this? Okay, but what about this point in your world? Once you compare both the worlds, and once you compare both the cases, it's obviously easier for the Ajis to buy and Ajis to understand. And I'm telling you right now, if you do comparison, they will remember it, because it's very easy to write down what you're saying in a comparative world. Okay. Um, Now this is the second motion. The motion is, this house will ban abortion. Gov case is, and try rebutting argument by argument. If you're rebutting argument one, say one. If you're rebutting argument two, say two. If you're rebutting argument three, say three. If you're rebutting as a whole, don't say anything. Okay, Gov's case, motion is, this house will ban abortion. Gov's first line of argument is, life of a baby is more important than life of a mother. Abortion is murder. Gov case line 2, abortion is murder and taking someone's life is immoral. Gov case line 3, banning abortion will lead to people using better contraceptives, or may increase awareness of contraceptives. Okay, uh, think for 30 seconds, a minute. Think, where are the gaps? Think, what is the premise of this case? Think where the logical gaps are and what we can attack here. And also think something on opposition's case, why on a comparative, not banning abortion is the way to go. Oh, okay, take 30 seconds. Again, I'm starting a timer. I'll start reading your chats in 30 seconds. Okay, Isha Madan, first statement is an assumption. Why is it an assumption? No, tell me why. Just don't tell me what is what. Tell me, why do you think it is an assumption? So basically, I think life of a mother is more important, because a mother can give birth to another child, but a newly born have nothing to do. But newly born grow up, and do jobs, and some of them become mothers. I think newly born do something in their life also. We can't murder someone who is yet to be born. That's not true. You know how fetus infanticide works. You know how there are laws that you can't kill fetuses after a point of time. So yeah, that's again. I don't think what you're saying is true. But if you have some way to prove it, if you can say or like prove with a logical argument that you can't murder someone who is yet to be born, please go ahead and try. Life of a person already living definitely more important than life of someone who isn't even born yet. It is simply saying that they don't care about the life of their citizen who's going to be a mother but maybe in danger. True, true. It's a true statement. What's the purpose of giving some life that would be filled with what's the purpose of giving some life that would be filled with trouble or woes? If it's being aborted, it's being a child is unwanted and the upbringing can't be done properly. True, true. So you're attacking the reasons why abortion does happen. That's true. That's a premise that they're trying to set out. If taking life is immoral, then without taking consent of women for abortion is also immoral. Taking life is immoral, then without taking consent of the woman for abortion is also immoral. I don't get what you're trying to say. I'm sorry. Would like to agree with government and would also like to assert that the life of an unwanted baby would like to agree with the government. Okay, that's a weird way to start. Uh, and also would like to assert that the life of an unwanted baby would be far worse than what an ideal life should be. Discrimination would take place and economical means would way below par. Okay. Okay. The government doesn't clarify whether pregnancy is caused due to rape will also be banned under this model as very interesting argument, Harsh. That's a very, very fair argument to make. True, that's a good attack. A on the assumption, B on the model, and I'm kind of sure you've done parliamentary debating before. Uh, Firstly, the statement is an assertion and it weighs one life against the other, and that there is simply no logic behind it. Okay, there is logic behind it. You have to just tell me why that logic isn't sufficient. I can tell you why life of a baby is more important than life of a mother, but that logic will be incomplete. The logic is there. The logic is falsified and probably not true. But if I tell a statement, you can't just say that it's not true. You have to tell me why also. Why life of a baby is not. Just don't say that. See, there is no logic and therefore I don't believe me. Tell me why the logic. Like, tell me why the life of the mother is more important here. Rather, if the mother is not capable of taking care of the baby, then sure, the life of the baby will not be worth living. Really, again, I'll tell you something on this. Unplanned pregnancies can happen even after careful use of proper contraceptives. True, but unplanned pregnancies, again, do they happen on the same scale? Will it reduce in the longer term, Rishabh? If I increase awareness of contraceptives and assuming that these quality contraceptives quality will increase, what if there's a what if argument here that what if we have less unwanted pregnancies in future? Mother has already acquired some level of education. This is somewhat ready to start earning and can make a living for herself. However, a baby is dependent, thus invasive versus life is more important. Okay, that's one way to say that economic outcome of a human being is what we're judging on. That's true. That's a fair argument. People do that. You can say that this person is an economic asset of the society and we do not want this economic asset to depreciate. And therefore, we want one of this to come true. But there's a lot of moral questioning to be done to this. But okay, interesting way to see this. The life of a mother is more important as she is someone on whom many people are dependent. Okay. Killing someone is immoral, but making someone living a life that will be filled with hardships and an unwanted life that is not very moral either. I could go on a very questionable note, but imagine life of poor people. No, they live their whole life with hardships and they live their whole life with problems. But is that life not worth living? Can life just be said that if your life is bad, you should not live? Okay, that's something that you guys need to introspect. I don't need to know that answer. But somehow, if abortion is banned, it will directly impact the person who are having private space with each other and also not supposed to be in a relationship or marriage in future. I don't know, Tarun, what you're trying to say here. Maybe try to explain a little bit more. Pregnancies also occur when the mother is not in age or mentally prepared to take care of baby. So in this case, abortion is the only way. True. Sadly, a better way of framing this question is say that imagine there's a teenager who has an unwanted pregnancy. What will you do then? Okay, try making your statements or rebuttals as a form of a question, and this is for everyone. Try thinking your rebuttals as a question and those answer those questions yourself. So Satvik just said that pregnancies could happen to people. Something that Ansh also said that unwanted pregnancies in extreme cases that happen, what will we do to that? So answer this question yourself. No, do you want people to live their whole life in a trauma? Do you want people to be mentally scarred for life? Do you want these lives coming out of this? Okay, this could go too long, but try thinking of rebuttals as a question and then try answering those questions yourself. Abortion is never a contraceptive method. Okay, i.e. a woman may get women may get pregnant accidentally even after using contraceptive device, so banning abortion will not lead to use. Um, okay, so that the third argument for everyone, it assumes that once you increase awareness and abortion is not an option, people will start using it. Because you guys are running third argument on an assumption that people already use contraceptives, which is really not true. Awareness about contraceptives is really urban in nature. If you go into ground realities or if you go into like even slum areas of urban cities, you will not see presence of contraceptives there. Banning abortion as a method to increase usage of contraceptives seems ridiculous and clearly dismisses the inequalities and accessibilities to contraception methods for women. And I already read your answer in my mind. By banning abortion, the gov essentially puts thousand women in double jeopardy as they can't afford contraceptive and can't abort the baby either. True. Agreed again. Promotion of contraceptives can be done through many other means, but there's no point pushing couples into forced parenthood. True. The premise of the debate here is banning abortion will lead to reduce cases of abortion. But there are things that are more often than not done under the control of person. Here will only be hazardous and illegal way that may harm both lives. I am not sure, Kushi, what you mean, but if you could re-explain. Abortion is not murder because it's a choice, and firstly, at the first, we need to understand why abortion is coming up. Abortion can make someone's life good when the fetus is not one of the father should be. No, no, no. Uh, I'm not reading that out loud. If awareness about contraceptives is the issue, then can be made through other means such as awareness campaign. There is no need to ban abortion. True. Yeah, that's the third argument. That's what you had to say about the third argument. That is this a means to promote contraceptives? Like, is this a way you guys can go? So because I'll give you a very wicked argument to think here, right? Because this is how you could think in a very weird way. Imagine government wants everyone to learn self defense, or government wants everyone to learn how to shoot a gun. And the way they do that is by declaring a purge every day of the year, which means that for one day there is no crime and the only one to defend yourself is you. Is that fair? Sure, it will achieve a government's way in which everyone will have some way to defend themselves and will learn in some way to defend themselves. But A, is that morally true? And B, are there any better ways to do that? Okay. Uh, Interesting thinking. Second argument itself contradicts the first argument. When they say that the life of baby is more important than life of mother through which we can reduce, that they save the baby and not the mother does taking the mother's life. Now, according to second argument, taking the life of the mother will also be immoral. Okay, I have a problem. I know what you're trying to say here, but I don't get why the life of a mother is always a threat. Killing someone and like their life living in trauma, I don't think that's an equivalence I can be assured about. But actually, Sakina, I like what you're thinking. Just maybe clarify your thoughts a little. Uh, Maybe read one on the second assumption again and then write it. Also, what happens when a teenager or a woman is raped and cannot have an abortion? True, that we already talked about that. The mother is essentially a human who has realized consciousness, has rights, and in simple words, a life. Prioritizing the life of fetus over a whole human makes no sense whatever. Uh, Makes no sense whatever, I'm not sure. But does it make sense here? Probably not. Uh, can we use the reference of rape cases when it leads to pregnancies? What will those inequalities do? Yeah, you definitely can. So, in a case or in a rebuttal, you can always and you should always use exceptions. You should always question what they are going to do about this exception. And you should always question that whether what they're doing about this exception, is it qualifying with the principle or not. So example, and I'll try to explain it to you, how do you use these unwanted pregnancies or immoral pregnancies that are happening, no? So imagine if they say that, okay, in these extreme cases we'll allow abortion because it's the right of a mother to not live a life under trauma. Now there you can start questioning, and if they do fall under this trap, if they go ahead and do say that, okay, these kind of pregnancies will allow to abort because these are highly immoral in nature. Now, at that point, you can say that, see, you can't decide on a general note which pregnancies are fine and which pregnancies are not. Either you can go individually and allow like courts to go through this, which is a very tedious and improbable project, like way to go forward. But also, you can also, let's say, see consistency here. No, so this is very much you can use. You can use it to question their principle and their consistency in their case. Doesn't specify what happens in case of incest when abortion is somewhat required. Yeah, true. It doesn't. It has a lot of model basis. But a child should also have the same rights. Yeah, sure. But tell me why. Taking someone's life is immoral, but an unwanted child had to do hardships all his life, and the child and mother will both suffer from psychological issues for a long time. So, true. Banning abortion would increase awareness. Banning abortion would increase awareness of contraceptives. It sounds like you ban pads and girls would have. Okay, I'm not reading that out loud, but okay, don't say that. Has banning something worked in the first place? Even if abortion is immoral and curtails the right of, we can government guarantee that their model will make abortion extinct. Instead, will force people to offer illegal and less safe methods of abortion. True. You can always question what happens, will motion, specifically this part, this house will ban abortion. If this house believes that abortion will be banned, these alternative or impractical solutions would generally not hold the same amount of value. Banning in general is not an efficient method of moving an activity that has been proven several times, dowry, child marriages, and prostitution. But think of this way, no? If you illegalize dowry and if you illegalize prostitution versus you legalize it and then there are some restrictions on it, which is easier to carry out. So, okay, dowry and like child marriages is not the best way to like quote as examples here, Ansh. Maybe drug use was a better way, or maybe weapons is a better way to say that it doesn't work even if you ban it or not. They're openly sold in the market, so might as well regulate them. Yeah, dowry and child marriages are something that are seen as very, very negative notions in society. So even if they are banned, there's no objection to it, right? Even if people like don't do it openly, like it's a better of world where there is some less amount of dowry in the world, right? So I understand where your principle is, and I agree with your principle, but examples are not like optimal here. Also, bringing up the criminal point again, if a child is raised in an unfavorable environment, they may be resort to unfair means of life. True, that's true. That's the example I gave it to you last time. Okay, stop writing. I'm not reading anything after this. I'm just reading the last couple of responses. Will government take responsibility to grow him or her for their whole life? Because parents are poor and pregnancy happens unintentionally. Okay. I was saying that first argument seems like a situation where they can save life of only one. No, no, no. Okay. Life of a mother is more on a notion of liberty of a mother, like just not sheer life, but like how life is associated with some qualities. So liberty of a baby is more important than liberty of a mother. See it on that note. And they're prioritizing the baby here. Okay. And someone is saying life is immoral according to second argument, they want to ban abortion. Okay. Yeah. I think Akshit Saxena, you thoda sa misread it, but okay. How about self determination of fetus? Uh, okay. It's an argument to be made, but it's not a direct argument to be made. You can say it in the debate, but as a rebuttal, I don't know how will it work. How do you want to frame such determination of the fetus? Do you want to phrase it something like it increase some amount of abortions, or because sex determination of fetus can also find their way in Gov's case? No, Gov can reverse this argument in saying that if you legalize abortion at some levels, you will also have to legalize sex determination of the fetus, and that can lead to several problems in countries like India where uh, a girl child and a male child, boy child do not hold the same value, which is highly immoral again. So you have to, your principle, I'm sure it can be used in an ops case, but use it carefully, okay? Because that argument can be swung in many other ways.
Sarin, read the text chat पर like बार.
कौन सा वाला?
He clarified what he meant by sex determination. He is using it as an evidence to the argument in that gay legal methods will be prioritized now.
Oh, okay, okay. As an evidence to the argument that sexism can be better evidence than dowry and drugs. Yeah, yeah, it is. It can be used. As it is more relevant to the very discourse. True. We'll move on. I think you guys are somewhat understanding where some principles of a debate lie. But again, just on like a everyone general note, do not tell me which is an assumption, do not tell me which is logically flawed, tell me what is where like what that assumption is and why that assumption is not true, or tell me what that logical gap is and tell me why that logical gap exists. Okay, सिर्फ ये बोलोगे कि ये assumption है इसलिए हम नहीं मानेंगे, assumption क्यों है is the rebuttal. Okay, अगर if you like imagine if you're a speaker in a debate and if you go out and say that see what they're saying is an assumption and we don't believe it, nobody's going to believe you also. So you have to give me reasons to buy your arguments also, just like on everyone's note. Now something next is not always applicable, and but I thought you guys should be told about this, but again, use it carefully, it's a double-edged sword. Preemptive rebuttals, right? So preemptive rebuttals are something that are done in the prime minister's speech, because that's the only speech in which you can preempt the other person's or other team's case. Uh, Only do it if you think there's a point and the other team will make 100% argument will make 100% needs to be broken down from voice for speech onwards. Okay, see this is applicable. So this is applicable in debates where you know for a sure that there is an argument that opposition team will make, and you need to attack that argument from the first speech onwards. If you want to do that, you can do it by in your PM speech by saying that see what we have said is this. Now we believe side opposition's case will be built on this premise, and we're gonna start attacking that premise from our first speech onwards. You can do that. That is allowed, but there are several problems if you don't do it properly. Yeah, yeah, true. SRC Chinese. Okay, yeah. First problem with preemptive rebuttals is if you say something that they won't building their case on, or if you assume that they're going to say it and they don't, they will have another case line to think about. You are going to give them content that they couldn't think about initially. So it can strike back. They might even turn that preemptive rebuttal into a case, and you might lose because of that. Also, preemptive rebuttals are only necessary if you have to give a speech, because prime minister's speech is really important for Gov's case. It sets out in which premise the debate is happening, what context is our principle laid out in, what will be our end case, what are the means that we're going to approach from. So PM speech is a lot of heavy characterization and context. So even if you spend a minute in preemptive rebuttals and they don't make those arguments, that's a minute wasted, and that's not good even like especially for the first speech, because you're just trying to assume that they're going to make certain arguments. Okay, so saying that preemptive rebuttals can happen if you think for sure opposition cannot win this case without proving this, and therefore we're going to start attacking this from first speech onwards. Do it. I'll be proud of you if you do it properly, but you will be really dissatisfied if they don't make that point. Okay, I'm just letting you know right now. Okay, Tarun, but sometimes it can be seen in debate that the person who is delivering the speech does not intend to take care of players. So how does it impact the team? So does it impact the team whose speaker is not taking care? I'll answer POIs in a minute. I have one more debate for you, and then I'll answer POI wala question. This is the third debate. Now, this is thoda sa, this could make your brain go blank because the answer is not very clear here. There are a lot of examples you'll have to use to prove opposition's case for me. Okay, so take like a minute and a half also if you need to. But the motion is this house will ban nuclear weapons. Gafka case is first nuclear war can erase humanity from existence. Therefore, the threat of them existing is too big for the world. Okay, that's the first line of argument that they're making. Second line of argument they're making: nuclear weapons promote the situation of war where every country is trying to fight each other. Okay, that's the second argument that they're trying to make. The third argument is nuclear deterrence does not work in 21st century. Okay, think for a minute and a half. I'm again starting a timer for a minute. I'll start reading your texts in a minute. So socho. Okay, start telling the opposition's case now. Tell me what are the rebuttals. Tell me how are we going to break this down. Nuclear weapons is one of the discovering field of science and can be used in effective manner in self-defense. Just saying things are discovered field of science and science may discover what's important is not good. In self-defense, tell me how. I'm just not gonna buy the argument if you say कि self-defense नहीं होता है. Field of discovery of science is not a good argument to make. It's just not. Like there are a lot of things science has discovered that are not good for humanity. Sheer existence of it with one country makes the other country strong arm themselves too, and when they know the consequence, have to ceasefire kind of thing. Okay, but I told you, no, try like tell me which argument. I taught you this first that you have to first tell me which argument are you trying to rebut, and then tell me the rebuttal for it. Otherwise, बहुत मड़ी है ज़्यादा. This is also the practice of attacking some arguments over others. Nuclear weapons have helped to maintain peace among countries since last many years. Have they? Are countries not fighting anymore? No, no. Do you not think that war is happening right now? Give me a little bit more evidence to prove that. Ever since the invention of nuclear heads, the big superpowers have not engaged in all-out hot war. The concept of mutual nuclear destruction has prevented any major big war. Yeah, true. It's called mutual assisted destruction, MAD. Yeah, true. That's a good argument to make here. That was the principal argument I was looking for, but again, tag the argument you're trying to rebut here. Banning nuclear weapons will inherently ban the possibility of advancement of technology. We aren't comfortable where human beings are allowed to evolve as civilization. Why? Nuclear weapons, do they promote any advancement of technology? I mean, we're not saying banning nuclear technology. You can still create energy out of nuclear technology. I mean, you can still have those plants. You just can't use them in warheads. That's what this motion is about. If you still think that nuclear weapons create some scope of advanced technology, please tell me how. I'm really intrigued to listen. Only because of nuclear weapon, Second World War ended. Otherwise, it may have continued for years and might have even erased humanity. Yeah, but it stopped at what cost? You like attacked a country in which their civilians died openly, and like the effects of radiations are still there. So was it an effective means to end a war? I don't know. Is that the correct way of proving that world or nuclear weapons can end war? I don't know. I don't think that's the correct argument to make. But what if a country has to defend itself? Maybe the other countries attacking, so the other countries need to be prepared. Plus, if we have nuclear weapons ready, the other country won't easily attack us. Okay, this does not assume that every other country except your country has nuclear weapons. This means that throughout the world, every country in the world will come to a place and ban nuclear weapons. Now, the argument not to be made here, isme you can't say that what if there's underground nuclear weapons. Isme you can't say what if some countries build it secretly. Okay, that will like question the legitimacy of the motion, which will say that you can't ban nuclear weapons because some countries just won't listen to you. That's not a fair argument to make because if you make that argument, there is no debate to be made. So you assume that banning nuclear weapons is a possibility. Okay. Nuclear weapons essentially exist even still because they're effective deterring war. The reason why India and Pakistan have avoided wars in 21st century after they procured them is because both of them are nuclear states. The third statement is also an assertion because USA has not been attacked by yet North Korea and Iran because of its deterrence capability. Oh, okay. Nuclear deterrence doesn't mean that we won't fire nuclear missiles at you. Nuclear deterrence means कि हम दोनों countries के पास nukes है that through that we won't fight any war. If yeah, nuclear deterrence on a larger note means that. But yeah, true. You're thinking on a better note. True. Nuclear weapons essentially exist even still because they are effectively deterring wars. Okay, I already read this. Nuclear deterrence doesn't work in 21st century as new economically weaker countries are the ones who invest most of the budget to security in developing the nuclear weapons. Not true. That's not true. Most of the economically weaker countries ally with a country, form a pact, and they like sign a treaty in which says that if we're attacked by a nuclear weapon by any other country, you will be the ones retaliating for us. Those are pacts. I don't think all the economically weaker countries are investing into nuclear technology actively. Nuclear weapons reduce the threat as it gives a sense of power, or maybe describes one as a strong country in terms of military forces. It gives a sense of power to how many countries? Disha, try thinking how many countries in the world have nuclear weapons, and does it give them power to strong arm? And nuclear weapons also technology. Here in Gulf Wales, you describe the models as it suggests a complete ban on nuclear weapons, and it doesn't talk about the usage in war. Okay, nuclear weapons and nuclear technology is something different. Nuclear weapons are a result or a product of nuclear technology. So nuclear technology is like a blanket term. Usme your nuclear energy also comes. Nuclear weapons is just a part of the technology. Okay. Yeah. Terrorists cannot be stopped from creating nuclear weapons, so countries need something against it. I don't think terrorists yet have nuclear weapons. So proving that statement again very tough. Terrorists cannot be stopped from creating nuclear weapons. Creating nuclear weapons is very tough, Prachi. You need radioactive material and like highly clarified uranium, which is not that actively available in the world. The fear of nuclear weapons have helped us to make war less damaging, like in the case of India and Pakistan. Okay. If nuclear deterrence wouldn't have worked in 21st century, then we all would have engaged in a full-fledged nuclear war. Considering the example of India and Pakistan, they avoided a war since both are nuclear weapons equipped with weapon war would have put them in a jeopardy. I think it's the other way around. Even if nuclear wars can erase humanity, that doesn't mean nuclear weapons should be banned entirely. If that's the fear, then improve cooperation between nations to prevent nuclear wars, or maybe regulate nuclear weapons more, not entirely ban them. Okay, the problem with this is that even if okay, you have the best cooperation in the world, and one day something goes wrong, and they will fire nukes at each other, and then your world will be gone. That as a notional threat. Okay, imagine both of these situations as utopia. Okay, and both of these utopia trying to break one way or the other. On one comparison, you will have these countries who do not have nuclear weapons at all. On the other side, you have countries that have good relations with each other. Okay, now इसमें problems find out करने की कोशिश करो. On one side, even if these countries break out to war, on one side, even if these countries like decide कि चलो आज मेरा mood नहीं है दोस्ती करने का, let's fight war. They don't have nuclear weapons with them. Okay, so the proportional harm that these alternatives can create is a little different. But okay, I think okay. Stop typing now. I'm not reading anything after what has been already written. Power makes you win, and if every country tries to improve their dominance through numbers of nuclear weapons that they have, then fighting these weapons yield the other side to defeat and actually bring an end. Then they would never think of a war because a nuclear war is the ultimate end. One side uses it, and the other won't even have the courage. Only making is still easy, but the part of testing has a big consequence. I don't know how easy making nuclear weapons is. Will banning nuclear weapons include disposal of the already existing weapons? If yes, then it's understood how disposal of some is going to be the nuclear waste, and which makes status quo due to worse implications. If no, then we essentially create a world wherein some countries have nuclear weapons and others aren't allowed to obtain them. This will mostly certainly create power dynamics in the world worse and probably will lead to neocolonialism. Okay. Two things like I think there are two different arguments you're making here. First about the environmental implications, uh, but that environmental implication still exists. No, either ways. If you see it in a comparison, Ansh, if you see that on one side you will have to dump all these, on the other side you just keep creating more nuclear weapons in that loop. So environment is getting like is going bad shit in both the worlds. Okay, but on a comparison, if you can prove that environmental implications are worse off once you dump all of them, then maybe that argument stands. The P5 nations do not have a right to procure nuclear weapons because it gives them powerful strike in the UN. If they remove the P5, will come out the same as any terms. Now this is a problem because principle. Okay, the P5 nations do not have the right to procure nuclear weapons because it gives them a powerful stake in the UN. P5 nations already have a very powerful stake in the UN. If they are removed, the P5 will come on the same terms as any other nation. That's not true. Uh, Now this is a problem because it's the same principle because the legal issue just banned in Second World War broke out. Uh, P5 nations have other powers except nuclear weapons also. The veto in United Nations Security Council is a huge, huge power. Which you guys, I don't think you don't understand the potential use of that power. Uh, what makes the government think that dictators and authoritative states will sign this ban, and what is the guarantee that these regimes will not pursue nuclear secrets? Okay, so in any of these motions, it assumes that it is possible to ban nuclear weapons. It assumes that in a notion, in a world, in a hypothetical world where nuclear weapons can be banned, now debate. Okay, if you say कि nuclear weapons ban हो ही नहीं सकते, then it's not a good debate. It's not the right way to debate this. The better way to debate it, why should you not ban it? Then why it's not possible to ban it? Okay, there's थोड़ी सी technically different lines of argument, but try thinking on the notion that why should you not ban it instead of why it's not possible to ban it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sarin, if I may add, I think I was reading the arguments as well. I think though it's highly appreciated that some good arguments came from where you're thinking the why this cannot happen, but I think that's the extent of it, right? Because that's where the good arguments are coming from, where the good argument should come from thinking along ki why it should be banned or why it
Yeah,
should not be banned. ये लोग कैन और कैनॉट पे ज्यादा सोच रहे हैं, दे आर टेकिंग द विल मोशन अ बिट टू सीरियसली, दैट्स
yeah.
नॉट ग्रेट.
It's okay. I really appreciate you guys are trying. Like through practice, you guys will like clarify your thoughts and understand how to debate motions technically. The difference is just framing these arguments. The like premise of those arguments is still the same. You can still say that even after banning these nuclear weapons, what do you do with the left out? It's a fair argument to make. No, because he said like what Ant said, you cannot ban them because it has really bad implications. That's one way of saying that you cannot ban them. The other way of we just I'll just frame this argument in two ways. One way of making Anshu's argument is saying that you cannot ban them because if you do ban them, all these things will go into an environment and this will create a really bad situation for the world. We're already in like a problematic climate change universe. We don't want it to worsen off. Or you can say that we don't want to ban nuclear weapons because it will create a situation. So this difference here is that you're just saying that we cannot versus we don't want to. Okay, the difference is very technical, but it makes a lot of difference once you complete all these arguments. Okay. Uh, Again, you will understand these nuances once you start debating, once you start doing your mocks. But okay, I really like how you guys are thinking. Okay, last part of this training session, points of information. Points of information are my favorite thing to do in a debate. They're really fun. Okay, points of information sound like technical things. So in a 7 minute, 20 minutes, 27 minute, 20 second speech, they are allowed after the first minute and 6th minute and like before the 6th minute of a speaker. So 8 minute ke, okay, so the way it works in debate, if you're speaking, you'll get one tap at first minute, one tap at six, and two taps at seven. Okay, the tap at first minute means that your protected time is over and you're now open to questions. You can't say no that I will not be taking like any request for question. You can only say that I won't be taking any question. इसका सिंपल मतलब ये समझो कि अगर जैसे ही मेरा 1 मिनट क्रॉस हुआ I cannot stop the other team from asking me questions. I cannot take them their questions. That's up to me. But उनको questions ही ना पूछने दो ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. Okay. So after the first minute, the other team is allowed to ask you questions. It's up to you whether you want to take them or not. Again, the same thing. After the 6th minute starts in a speech, you are not allowed to ask questions because first minute ends like before first minute ends, first minute starts ends, and after the 6th minute, it's called protected time. It's called this majorly because if imagine if somebody asks you a question in the first 30 seconds, that doesn't make sense, no, because you haven't even said anything yet. Points of information are generally asked on the speech given by the individual speaker and not by the other speakers. Example of this, like a simple example, imagine if PM says something and you don't ask PM the question, but you ask DPM that तुम्हारे PM ने ये बोला था, please explain. It's better, it's okay, but you could do this in two ways. A, जो PM से तुम्हें question पूछ रहा था, say that in your leader of opposition speech and give time to it because that would make more sense, and use that POI for the second speaker or DPM and ask what they said in their speech. Because First thing is I just remember what they just said. No. So for example, if somebody says this, and after 20 seconds of saying that, you ask a question. I just still remember what that exact argument was, and questioning that exact argument makes more sense right there. If you do it after a speech, you have 7 minutes of yourself between that. No. So use your own speech time to ask questions, like to frame questions if they don't take your question. Secondly, about POIs, if a speaker denies POIs, for example, after 1 minute, I ask the opposition team point of information, and they say not right now. I can't ask another point of information for 30 seconds. I can't just keep badgering them. I can't just say take one, take one, take one. You can't. You have to give 30 seconds between each question. And generally, if they deny your question, wait a minute or so. Take a minute. They will not take after 30 seconds. Either on a realistic note, don't start asking questions before the third or the fourth minute. It won't make sense because they haven't said anything real till now to be questioned. Uh, Now, just two simple things. First, always write your questions. This is not like important, but it's really recommended that always write your questions before asking, because sometimes whatever you think in your head makes sense before you write it down, and when you write it down, the question makes zero sense. Has happened with all of us here who have debated in the circuit. We're telling you that once you frame your question, once you write it down, there's always scope of improving the question you're going to ask. No, so मान लिया अगर मेरे को कुछ question पूछना था and I write it down, there is a better way of framing the question I wanted to ask. The same way, after writing the question down, I think like, no, this doesn't make sense, or no, the answer to this is fairly simple, or no, the answer that they will give is like doesn't help my case or doesn't help my team. So you don't ask that question. So generally, always write your questions down. Lastly, asking a time limit of asking a question is 10 to 15 seconds. Uh, yeah, 15 seconds के ऊपर they'll stop you. They'll say I don't have time for more. Please sit down. Okay, so do POI boost our marks? Do answering POI? Yeah, they do. There is no clear like objective way of improving your speaker's speech. It's really up to Agis, but answering POIs does make sense because you're engaging with the enemy. Need to stop the opposite team, right? So engaging with them does definitely increase your marks as a speaker. Also, you should take a POI every speech because it's not good to not take questions because it looks that you're not sure about your case. It looks like you're scared to answer questions. Again, don't do that. What about asking POI? No, asking POI doesn't do anything for you. It does good for your team, but nothing as an individual. Okay, this is where the good stuff is. Good POIs, how do you ask them? Generally, start by quoting a premise you're trying to question and show that the judges know what the question is about. So say that you said right now, or your PM said right now, again, it depends on the situation, but imagine he's the PM. So you said right now XYZ, and the question to that is this. Okay? Or give a context. We live in a world in which this happens, and therefore our question is this. Okay, so start by quoting some premise or giving some context in a question, or like a 3-4 second context, like this, and therefore a question is this. Because if you don't do this, if you don't tell the premise you're trying to question, the judges won't understand what a question is about. Okay, it's really important to like generally quote a premise you're trying to question. After that, have a strategy in mind before asking a question. Okay, this is for everyone. Whenever you're about to ask a question or whenever you think about asking a question, think of these two first things. What is the answer expected out of this question? Which is, if I ask the speaker this question, what is the general answer I'm expecting to come out? And how will I use that information once I get it? Okay. This is important because if you ask these questions to yourself always, there will be some POIs that you'll be like, no, does not make sense and I should not ask this. Okay. So always do this. Be clear about the question. Don't take too much time about your question. Could be easily strawmanned or even ignored. Yeah, this happens a lot. This will happen a lot if you make your questions really long. So imagine you stand up, you start saying blah 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 blah, and for like 15 seconds you just keep on speaking. The speaker is allowed to make you sit down. The speaker will say that, sorry, you have taken too much of my time. I'm not giving you more time. I don't think you have asked a question yet, and therefore I'm not going to be answering it. That is something fair for a speaker to do. Okay. If you take anything more than 15, 16, 20 seconds at max, they will say that, sorry, I can't answer your question because you haven't asked one. Okay. Uh, Lastly, generally ask a teammate before asking a question if they have something better. Again, this really depends on teams. Um, some teams don't do this, some teams do. Some teams don't consult with each other because they feel that it might disturb the other person from making notes and they trust each other. But for beginners and like for like at a starting point, you should consult a teammate, say that, okay, I'm going to ask this question. Do you have something better? Should I ask this or not? Okay. Yeah. And now, lastly, how do you use points of information effectively? Because, and I'll be very abruptly clear about this, just asking good questions doesn't do shit. Okay. If you just say, ki, okay, this is my question, they answer it really badly. 90% of the times, it won't do anything. You have to use it properly, and there's an effective way to do it. And okay, please do this. Okay. If you ask a good question and then don't use it effectively, I will be disappointed. First things first, always mention the POI in the following speech. Always assumes that you had a good question and not a bad one. Whatever question you ask the previous speaker, and if you do have a speech, wait, you will always have a speech after that. So yeah, if you have a speech after that, take 30 seconds to explain why the question you asked is important and relevant to the debate, and take those seconds to also explain why their answer was bad shit, and we don't accept that as an answer, and we believe that they can't defend their case properly. Be clear about this, okay? Make sure that the ads know what your question was about. Make sure that your ads know why you asked that question, and make sure you answer it in that way. Because if you don't tell me in the next subsequent speech that why that POI was important, Ads will ignore it. I'll be sorry and abrupt about it, but ads are more likely to ignore it because there's a lot of information to consume. Okay, and there are chances that ads might ignore the question. So just to be really sure, always mention your question again. Okay. Secondly, never ever question any example given by the opposite teams because you mostly get one question per speaker and always attack the basis of the case. Yeah, this is very simple. I told you already, examples can be manipulated to a very great extent. It's like statistics. You can tell what you wanted to see. Okay, so don't attack individual examples because A वो बोल देंगे कि ठीक है, what about but what about this in our example, or what about the other example that we gave to you, or what about the other 20 examples we have in line for you. Don't question examples, okay? Examples are also built on either a logic or a premise. Question the premise and therefore you'll get a better answer always out of it. uh, yeah, thirdly, use points of information to point out flawed assertions, asking them to prove something that they deliberately are choosing not to. Okay, just to prove the third point, I'll take us to a debate again once. Okay, let's do this. The first statement is the gambling is a social evil, generally seen as a negative virtue. Okay, and there's a flawed assertion. So imagine you say that okay, gambling can be seen as a social evil. Gambling can be a negative virtue, but we necessarily don't ban out every negative virtue in the society. So why should we do this? Okay, that's a fair argument for you to question, fair rebuttal for you to ask, or fair POI for you to ask. Okay, but like even if you do this in your speech, there are times where teams will either ignore it or straw man it. But it's much tougher to ignore a question, right? So, for example, somebody is taking your question and you say these words. Okay, gambling is a social evil. We'll take your best case, but we don't ban every negative virtue in the society, like smoking, like drinking. So, why this? Please explain. Now, at this point, they can't say, okay, I don't know, we'll answer it later because it's like it really looks bad on the speaker. Okay. So, if you think there's something that they're really trying to dodge, something that you've been pointing out in your speeches, use points of information to point it out in front of the judges. Make sure like they have to answer that question. With that, I'm done with like the PPT. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be here as long as we have questions. If we don't, we can end the training session. So we'll give you like a couple of minutes to ask the question. One second. Can we discuss the point number one? Okay, you mean the mentioning POI in the following speech? Okay, so after asking a question, or like after saying asking someone a question, in the next speech you have to explain, or you should explain what the question was about, why the question was important, and why their answer was not sufficient. Okay, once you do that, the judges will realize that the opposite team does not know what they're talking about. That's what the point number one is. What would be a good example of preemptive rebuttal? Uh, okay, wait, let me think for a second. Let's take a motion only. Let's do this motion. But the thing with preemptive rebuttals is very situational, and like there are not always good ones. But I'll tell you like a simple example. Okay, imagine this motion is this house will ban nuclear weapons, and Ops ka first line and like their main case is about nuclear deterrence. Okay, Ops cannot build a case without saying that no nuclear weapon does not create a better world. Okay, so you have to understand in this motion, their premise of opposition team has to be that in a world where nuclear weapons do exist, nuclear deterrence takes part and wars don't happen as much. A good preemptive rebuttal to this is okay, nuclear wars may prevent nuclear wars from going on, but nuclear weapons do not stop war from existing or do not deter anything in real life. So, for example, even after nuclear weapons, a Cold War was fought in hot wars also, right? Korea mein a war still happened. Vietnam still happened, right? Afghanistan still happened. You can say all this in your PhD that even if you say that nuclear deterrence does work, we don't believe it works in the way they're trying to make it work. And isme you can add another layer of preempting it that say that even if this stops a nuclear war from happening, even if it causes a deterrence, we don't believe that this is deterrence in reality. We don't believe any war is being stopped because of these nuclear weapons existing. That's like one of the example. A good example of any preemptive rebuttal is something in which you for sure know what the opposite team's case line is going to be about. Any other question? Uh, you can say no if you don't have questions, and we can end the session because I don't want to keep you all waiting. Can rebuttal be questions? Yeah, rebuttal can be questions always. But once you ask question, be sure to answer it also. If you just ask questions in rebuttals and don't answer it yourself, it's not. It doesn't look good. Okay. Uh, okay. So I think we'll end the session here. I thank everyone for staying. For all those who missed, bad luck for them. Again, if you have any questions regarding this, can VIPs respond to PM/LO? Yes and no, both. Depends on whether their speakers have at least tagged arguments made by Prime Minister or LO or not. Uh, if not, it's a muddy area because gov whips are still allowed certain amount of liberties. Opposition whips are not allowed to. Opposition whip will be seen as late matter. Uh, any specific way to calculate MOV? Yeah, winning team minus losing team. Like the most specific way to calculate margin of victory. Anything else? Okay, then Riju, are you here? Yeah, okay. So what's the maximum MOV? Maximum MOV is 12 in a debate. I think we can stop the recording. I thank everyone for coming to the session. If you have any questions, do ask in the query form. One of us will answer it. Okay, with that, thank you. You can stop the recording.